Hello everybody and welcome to our new lesson, which is threats to world security. It's gonna be in chapter 33, section 3. Couple of years ago, the American government in Oklahoma City had made three maintenance guys enter one of the busiest malls over there in Oklahoma, pretending that they are tending the plants inside the mall. But in fact, they sprayed the plants over there with some kind of a biological weapon, which was the smallpox. Later on, of course, people get sick because of this disease, but in fact, it was only an act. The government wanna say the public respond to the spread of a contagious disease. And of course, nobody was injured during this drill. It was only a simulation to see how the government or how the public officials will deal with such a crisis or with such a threat. Of course, the major threat nowadays to the world security is terrorism. Terrorism is the unlawful use or even the threat of violence to cause fear and to advance political, religious, or even ideological goals. The terrorist groups all over the world, by the way, had spread and they had attacked several civilian buildings and civilians in order to protect or in order to gain their goals from their own point of view. Like in Latin America, in Colombia and Peru, like what we had discussed earlier in the previous lessons, Panama, Peru, and Colombia, all of them are involved in the drug smuggling and the drug trafficking issues with the states. So the terrorist groups over there joined the drug traders. In Great Britain, there is the IRA movement, especially in Ireland. Their aim and their goal was to end the British domination over the British control over the northern parts of Ireland. So the IRA is simply an abbreviation for the Irish Republican Army. Also in Sri Lanka and the other part of the world, over there, the terrorist group over there is called Tamil Tigers. Their aim and their goal was simply to gain their own independence. In our area, in our region in the Middle East, there is a lot of terrorism. Why? This is simply because of the ongoing Arab-Israeli conflict, as well as the region's history of the Western colonial domination. So the people, or from their own point of view, that the people over there in the Middle East have some kind of negative feelings toward the Europeans. Three major terrorist groups over there in the Middle East, like Hamas, Hezbollah, and Al-Qaeda. Hamas, it was formed after the Israeli occupation of Palestine, and of course their aim and their goal was simply to destroy Israel and to create an independent Palestinian state. After the Israeli occupation or the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982, the Lebanese resistance movement over there was known as Hezbollah, and they get the goal of destroying Israel. And of course, their first goal was simply to gain the Lebanese independence. Then later on, they turned to the complete destruction of Israel. Of course, some dictators or some leaders around the world will like one of the ideas or one of the goals of one of the terrorist groups all over the world, and they will start to give it some kind of support, some kind of financial helping for this group, like in Hezbollah, and Iran simply declared in 2006 that they are supporting Hezbollah, and this is called in history state-sponsored terrorism. Al-Qaeda was one of the major terrorist groups in the Middle East, and their aim was simply to get rid the Middle East of the Western influences, for every single kind of Western influence. And of course, they had made a lot of attacks, and I'm talking here about the three major terrorist groups. Of course, the famous terrorist attack was in the 9/11, which resulted in the destroying of the two main World Trade Centers over there in the States. So after this incident, the American government saw that there was some kind of, there must strengthen their system, and they passed new legislation and new laws, and they established a complete new department in the government, and they call it the Department of Homeland Security. This Department of Homeland Security focused on the security of the nation's borders and transportation networks, and sought to find and cut off the funding sources for the terrorist networks. طيب. September 11, after it happened in 2001. Immediately after these attacks, the American government went to destroy, let's have a look here at this map, to destroy Taliban movement over there in Afghanistan. The Taliban is one of the terrorist groups over there, and they said that the Taliban terrorist groups is simply supporting or hiding the members of Al-Qaeda group. So they went over there to Afghanistan in 2001, and the American government, of course, the American army. After that, by 2 years, in 2003, they went to Iraq, proclaiming that Iraq is simply supporting or helping the terrorist groups in the region, and they have weapons of mass destruction. So simply they went to invade and to get rid of the Iraqi president at that time, who was Saddam Hussein. But unfortunately, the story was something else. But it's not our issue here in this lesson. So, in order to strengthen the Homeland Security, they established a new department in the government in order to prevent the nation from facing such a terrorist attack again. Other threats to the world security, regarding the first one was terrorism. The second threat, of course, is weapons. And by weapons, I mean the weapons of mass destruction, the WMD. Weapons of mass destruction are weapons including biological, chemical, and even nuclear weapons that can cause an enormous amount of destruction. We have lots of kinds for weapons of mass destruction. We have biological, chemical, and nuclear. For the biological weapons, one of the advantages of of course, weapons does not have any advantages, but they are cheap, and anyone can develop it, and it's found in nature. So one of the attacks that happened by using one of the biological weapons, it happened actually in 2001 in the States too, after the instance of 9/11 with 1 week. After 1 week, they simply send 5 messages, 5 envelopes, and these 5 letters were meant to go to prominent senators and some media icons over there in the States. In fact, it was sprayed with the anthrax, which was one of the newly developed biological disease, and it has a message written with it. You cannot stop us. We have this anthrax. You die now. Are you afraid? Death to America, death to Israel, and Allah is great. Of course, this attack had resulted with the killing of 5 Americans who used to work in the American box offices, and 17 were injured. يبقى the weapons of mass destructions are biological and chemical. The usage of the chemical weapons, by the way, and it has more results, and I'm talking about the casualties here, more than the biological ones. They used in the both world wars, in the Iran-Iraqi conflict in 1980 until 1988, they used the chemical weapons. And in 1995, Japan has used one of the chemical weapons, which was sarin. Examples for the chemical weapons are the mustard gas, the nerve gas, and sarin. And our example for the biological weapons will be the anthrax. Again, the weapons of mass destructions. Weapons of mass destruction are the biological, chemical, and the last one, the nuclear. The nuclear weapons, here is a map. I would like you to see it. In this map, these numbers goes back to the year 2017. This is the nuclear heads all over the world, almost 15,000. Only 9 countries have these weapons of mass destructions or have these nuclear heads. After the Cold War, the States and the Soviet Union, they simply signed the treaty. This treaty, or they call it the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, or an Arms Control Agreement. It was meant to stop the spread of nuclear weapons all over the world. Nowadays, all the countries around the world had signed this treaty to not use any or try to develop a nuclear head because of its enormous destruction power. But unfortunately, it's hard to control or to inspect every single country all over the world not to use the nuclear weapons or the nuclear heads, because you can simply use the nuclear technology for legitimate purposes, like generating energy, for example. But there is an agency supported by the United Nations this agency is responsible for inspecting and searching for any country that develops a nuclear technology. This agency is known as the International Atomic Energy Agency. And as you see here in this picture, here you can see the result of bombing B-83 bomb, and this is one of the strongest nuclear heads possessed by the American army. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as you see, this is the amount of the smoke that will go up in the air. And by the way, yani, this small amount had lasted, had results in the soil and on earth for even 20, 25 years. Try to imagine the disaster that will happen after bombing such a weapon. Thank you, and until we meet again in the next lesson, inshallah.